Welcome to episode 4, which I'm going to entitle Dad and Otherwise. Take 3. Okay, so that last episode was kind of dark, talking about future prophetic events and end times and all that stuff. Today I decided to lighten things up a bit, and I'm going to share with you a few of my favorite jokes, Dad and Otherwise. Now, normally I kind of script everything out so I know exactly what it is I'm going to say, but these being my favorite jokes, I know them well enough that I can go totally off script. But if you've heard these before, don't stop me because I want to hear them again. My pastor actually told me a dirty joke the other day. Yes, it was my pastor, and he told me a dirty joke. Why does Piglet smell bad? Piglet smells bad because he's always playing with poo. Okay, so there's three old guys that are on a bench, and they're complaining about getting older, and we all know that getting older is bad. But these three old guys sitting on a park bench, and the first guy says, "You know, I really hate getting old because, I mean, I've got these prostate problems, and I go to stand in front of the toilet to go pee, and it just kind of dribbles out, and nothing really happens, and I feel full, but I gotta pee, and I can't pee because I'm old, and blah blah blah." So the second guy goes, "Yeah, I know exactly what you're going through." He goes, "Actually, my problem's a little different because, I'm constipated all the time, and I don't know if you've ever tried to pass a baseball, but it's just not good. So I'm constipated all the time, and I hate it. I hate getting old." And so the third guy goes, "Yeah, yeah." He goes, "I've got similar issues. I know what you mean." He says, but for me, it's really not that bad. I mean, I every morning at 9 a.m. sharp, I have a really good pee. By 9:30, I have a really good bowel movement. It's got a nice consistency. Everything's fine. Now, if I could just wake up by noon. Okay, dark humor. We love dark humor around the house. As you notice, I'm wearing my Flash T-shirt, which is really kind of a interesting thing because everybody knows that I'm the slowest person around, so that's kind of an inside joke. This one's for my son, Levi. He says, two muffins are in an oven, and the first muffin looks at the second muffin and it says, "Man, is it me or is it really hot in here?" And the second muffin goes, "Holy crap, a talking muffin." Guy goes to a doctor and he's got a skin rash. The doctor says, "Here, take these pills, take two of these pills after a warm bath. Come back and see me in a week." So the guy goes, he goes home, and he comes back in a week, and the doctor's, checking up with him, and he goes, "So, how do the pills work?" And he goes, "I don't know. I haven't finished drinking the warm bath yet." Uh, okay, next one. Man driving through the suburb streets, and he accidentally hits a dog. Well, the dog is out in front of this one particular house, so he walks up to the front door of the house, knocks on the door. Lady comes to the front door, and he says, "Lady, I have to apologize, but I think I hit your dog." And she goes, "Well, how do you know it was my dog? What did it look like?" And he goes, "Well, kind of like this." No, she goes, "No, no, 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 no. What did it look like?" Oh, I just screwed that one up. Goes, the first one goes, "What did the dog look like?" And he goes, "Kind of like this." And then she goes, "No, no, no. What did it look like before you hit him?" And he goes, "Oh, well, kind of like this." All right, so I screwed that one up. But and then of course my favorite pickup line is, "Hey, does this rag smell like chloroform to you?" A couple of groaners. I don't know if you know what a groaner is. Uh, this goes back to the days when Roy Rogers and Dale Evans were still roaming cowboy stuff. But for their 75th anniversary, uh, Dale Evans gave Roy Rogers a really expensive pair of cowboy boots. Tony Lama boots, soft as kid glove leather, very expensive boots. The next day they're out on the range, riding the horses around, Trigger, and everybody's having a good time and a mountain lion jumps out of nowhere, grabs Roy by the ankles, tears off his brand new shoes, and and he goes off. So of course, Roy Rogers just is irate over the whole thing. I mean, and so he organizes a posse, and it's not safe to have the mountain lion just out roaming around anyway. So he sends his posse out to capture the mountain lion, and they go out. They're out on the trail for a day or two. And eventually they do find a mountain lion, but they're just not 100% certain whether or not it's the right one. So the guy that captures the mountain lion, he brings him up and gives him to he shows him up in front of Roy Rogers, and then he says the ultimate line: "Pardon me, Roy, is this the cat that chewed your new shoes? Wah wah." Okay. So there was a theory that Russia was trying to take over the World Basketball Olympics, and so what they did was um, they kidnapped Kareem Abdul-Jabbar so they could take his DNA and they could clone Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and create the perfect uh, basketball team for all time, and they would rule basketball from that point on. But it wasn't completely successful because they only came up with one or two viable duplicates of Kareem. And if I understand it, somewhere in the Russian vaults, they actually do have two or three iced Kareem clones. Uh, some people may not know, and it may not be obvious, that I was a professional clown for a few years. I did the whole animal balloons, and sorry about the pause there. Levi's getting in the shower. Anyway, so I was saying some people might not know that I was a professional clown for a while. Um, I did the whole animal balloons, juggling, that whole thing. I got my start at Circus World down in Florida, which was a really good time in my life. So some of my first experiences as a pirate uh, were as I was hired out. Yeah, I was doing the clown thing, but of course, they needed other types. I was Jar Jar Binks once, and but the but my clown boss came up to me one time and she said, "Hey, I mean, we don't need a clown, but for this particular furniture store over here, they would like to have a pirate." Apparently, what they were doing was, this whole pirate chest of values to sell extra furniture and that sort of thing. So, so I was a pirate for a day, but I kind of went overboard because what I did was I went to one of these costume shops and I bought one of these big long, or I didn't buy it, but I rented one of those long great coats, with the eye patch, the hook, and the whole 9 yards. I wound up spending almost my entire salary for that event just on the costume, but man, was it a lot of fun. And I came away with a lot of pirate jokes from that. So, uh, for example, pirate walks into a bar. He has a wooden leg and an eye patch and a hook for a hand. Bartender is curious and he says, "So, how did you get the wooden leg?" Pirate says, "Well, it was a terrible sea battle. I stood bravely directly facing 12 cannons. All I managed to hit was my leg." Bartender says, "Well, what about your hook?" And the pirate takes another swig of grog and he says, "Arr, 'twas the day after the British Navy caught up with us, and they tied me to the mast, and I only escaped by gnawing my own hand off." Bartender at this point is growing skeptical. He says, "Okay, so how'd you get the eye patch?" Pirate takes another swig. He goes, "It was a mutiny. My own crew left me marooned on a desert island, but I had no fear. I lay down on the sand to wait to be rescued, and I looked up. A seagull flew over and pooped in me eye." Bartender says, "That's ridiculous. Nobody loses an eye from bird crap." The pirate finished his ale in one gulp and grimaced. "Yeah, but it was my first day with me hook." So then the bartender asks, he said, "So where did you get the hook?" And he says, "In a secondhand store," he replies. How much does a pirate pay for his corn? Arr, it's a buccaneer. Kid comes, we just had Halloween. Kid comes trick or treating dressed as a pirate. And so I asked him, I said, "Well, where's your buccaneers?" And he looks at me and he scowls and he says, "Underneath me bucking hat." Okay, so that's a little off color, but um, what's a pirate's favorite letter? R. There's a lot of good answers to that one too. If you know any more, put them in the comments. What's a pirate's least favorite letter? It says, "Dear sir, your internet access has been terminated due to illegal usage. Sincerely, your service provider." How many beans are in a pirate's chili? There be 239 beans exactly in a pirate's chili. Otherwise, it'd be too farty. And finally, I have what may be the world's longest joke, the longest joke in the world, which I read courtesy of Reader's Digest, and it's been in my repertoire for a long time. And I learned this joke, by the way, before I was stationed in Alaska. Way back when, there was a professor at the University of Anchorage, Alaska, who was a professor of uh, Eskimo artifacts, and he had been there for 40, 50 years. He knew everything that there was to be known about Eskimo culture. He spoke the language. He knew all the arts and crafts, and so he was pretty much at the pinnacle of his profession in terms of Eskimo um, Eskimo knowledge. So one day he's sitting around his office, and he's saying to himself, he says, I pretty much reached the pinnacle of my profession. I know all the arts and crafts. I know the language. I speak the language fluently. Um, there's just one extra step that I could take with all of this. And he says, I wonder if it's possible to become a naturalized Eskimo. Is that even possible? Do they even do that sort of thing? So the professor gets on the phone. He calls up to Igigik. Yes, that's an actual place. Calls up to Igigik in Alaska and talks to the Eskimo Inuit chieftain up there. And he's talking it over with the chieftain. He says, I mean, this is something that I think I'd like to do. I mean, I've done everything else. I just want to become a naturalized Eskimo citizen. Is it something that can be done? And the chieftain says, well, yeah, you can do that. I mean, there's kind of a process to it, but if you're willing to come up here and go through the process, then we'll kind of walk you through it. So the professor gets in his float plane from Anchorage and he flies up to Igigik in northern Alaska, and he meets up with the chieftain, Eskimo chieftain, and they're sitting there around the igloo, and he says, "So how does the process work, right?" So so the chieftain explains it to him. He goes, "Listen, it's really kind of a three-step process. Of course, you understand they're all talking in Eskimo, and I don't talk Eskimo, so I'm just going to have to translate. But so the chieftain and the professor are sitting there inside the igloo, and they're talking it over. And the chieftain says, okay, it's kind of a three-step process, all right? First thing you have to do is um, you're going to have to drink a quart jar of our specially distilled Eskimo whale blubber liqueur. You think you can do that? The professor's like, yeah, no problem. And he goes, now step two is we're going to hand you the sacred ulu knife, and we're going to show you where the ice cave is. You have to go inside the ice cave and kill the great white polar bear that's inside the cave. Is that something you could do? And the guy's like, professor's like, yeah, piece of cake. Simple, I can do it. He goes, now the third step is once you've done those and you've been successful at them, you come back to the camp and you have sex, you make love with an Eskimo woman, and then you will truly be an Eskimo citizen. Do you think you can do that? And the professor's like, yeah, great. I mean, not a problem. So he signs all the documentation, and then they wake up the next morning, and here's all the elders that are all sitting around with the bonfire, and there's like a folding table that's sitting in the middle of the clearing, and it's got this mason jar that's filled with this yellow viscous. fish smelling liquid in it. And the professor walks up to the table, and the chieftain nods at him, and then the professor picks up the mason jar and he starts swigging it down. I used to be able to do the hand motions better, but you get the idea. He swallows it all down in one gulp, slams down on the table, wham, and everybody's like, "Yay!" So then next step is they bring out the wooden case that's got the sacred ulu knife in it. They open it up, they hand it to the professor, and they get on their sled with the sled dogs and they go off towards the ice cave. They get to the outside of the ice cave. The chieftain points on the inside of the cave, and then the professor goes inside the cave. And of course, it's just like really, really quiet, except you can hear the faint breathing of the polar bear on the inside. and the professor sneaks in. He gets to the inside of the cave. All of a sudden, the bear wakes up. Rah! He woke up rudely, and of course, the next you hear all these, the slashing of the ulu knife and the clothes tearing off of the professor, and shredding of fur and blood everywhere, and this horrible battle on the inside of the cave, and then it goes quiet again. And then out comes this professor. This professor comes crawling out of the cave on his hands and knees. And of course, he's just ripped to shred, blood coming out of every orifice. And, he obviously needs some kind of a doctor. He's crawling out on his hands and knees, and he's still got the ulu knife in his hand. And he comes crawling out of the cave, and he crawls hands and knees up to this Eskimo chieftain. And he looks him square in the eye, and he says, "Now, where's that Eskimo woman that you want me to kill?" Pause for effect. If you don't get it, comment, let me know. But that's one of my favorites. Love you guys, and we will see you next episode. I don't even have a clue what it is yet, but hopefully you enjoyed this one a little more than the previous one. Thanks again.